Michael Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and we're going to be lined up for a really fun show tonight. You've got me, you've got my brother Alonzo, as we like to say, and we've got Eva Tenant, who's coming, and she's an amazing, exceptional student of mine, and we're going to have a really fun night. When we talk, we're going to talk about cloud architect job training and the importance of cloud architect career development. At some point, I'm sure the cloud architect versus cloud engineer will pop up. We'll get into multi-cloud architecture questions and multi-cloud strategy questions. I'm sure questions will come up with cloud computing fundamentals training and any kind of tech career guidance you like. We're going to be covering it. So we're going to talk about solution architects versus cloud architects and cloud architects versus solution architects. We may touch on cloud architect interview training, and we may even discuss cloud architect presentation skills and leadership skills and technology. So it's going to be really fun, really fun. But here's the thing. We've got Eva, and she's recently joined our program, and she's amazing. And like me, she had another career first. Like me, Eva's a medical professional. See, I started out by being a firefighter, EMT, and then paramedic. Then I became a nurse, and I became a nurse practitioner, and I woke up one day and said, I'm going to go work in tech. And I'll tell you, when I learned medicine, that's how I learned how to be an architect. I learned it all in medicine. And, when we talk about this at some point tonight, I'm going to tell you how medicine taught me how to become a cloud architect and a network architect. But because of this, I want to introduce Eva. Eva is one of our amazing students. You may ask her about her experience in the program. She may talk about what it's like to transition careers, but all kinds of cool, exciting things are going to be coming from Eva. So Eva, would you say hello? And then we'll have Alonzo say hello. And of course, my Chief Operating Officer, Chris, will say hello, who's the Master of Ceremony. So Eva, you want to say hello to everybody?
Yes, thank you so much, Mike. I just want to say I'm grateful for the opportunity to just be amongst greatness, to be amongst dedication, and most importantly, to be amongst passion. I am so grateful to be a part of our Go Cloud Architect and Careers community. My name is Eva Tenya. I am a certified pharmacy technician and EMT, so I'm a first responder as a Mike. And just with my experience in the cloud, it's honestly been a breath of fresh air because I love knowing that everything that I'm doing and everything that I'm learning, I'm excited about, and I get to expand more in. And more importantly, I'm so grateful to be blessed with such brilliant minds like Alonzo and Mike and Chris and all the other students that we have a part of our program that just constantly feed in not only positivity, as well as cloud intelligence and insight. So I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And Eva, we're thrilled you're here. And we got to tell you, everybody now knows the reason we love you so much. They don't know how big your brain is, but they can see how awesome your attitude is and your energy and enthusiasm. I know how big your brain is too. And I also know how good your work ethic, and I also know how good your capability is. So, boy, when you find yourself in your ultimate role, and I know it's coming, somebody's going to be very lucky to have you on their team if I don't steal you first.
Thank you.
This girl is fire. I feel like I'm a judge on a cloud contest here. You have magnetism. You just have a positive radiance about you, Eva. So I am happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm trying to find my stuff over here on all my monitors. I agree with Alonzo. It's like the golden buzzer is right in front of me.
yeah, you got the 10 sign here,
Right, so you guys are being awfully quiet, so I'm not sure how to handle that. Y'all were all talkative and.
Oh, we'll turn it up.
We'll talk about anything. I'm happy to babble about anything.
We can turn up if you like, Chris. I mean, we can get this thing popping.
Well, I'm not used to this level of quietness. Is this how it's going to be when I bring people in from now on?
Oh, no.
We're going to be on your best behavior. And
we want Eva to be comfortable, but she knows how we are. She's seen us in action. So welcome to the party. Let's get this thing going. Let's get excited about cloud. Let's get excited about Eva. Let's get excited. Can we get a hashtag for Eva?
Yeah, let's get cloud hired Eva.
Hey, Kenya.
And Babita,
Carl's an amazing student. Babita, she's wonderful. And this is our Eva, Babita. And yes, she's fantastic in every way.
I love you guys so much.
All right. So since everybody's being shy all of a sudden today, well, I guess we'll start it off. And I like to put you on the spot. I like to put everybody on the spot. And Eva's gotten to know me well enough to know that I do it with everybody, not just Mike and Alonzo. So I'm going to open it up with Eva. So obviously you're in one of our programs at Go Cloud Careers. You're in the Cloud Architect Career Development Program. If you would share with us a little bit about your experience. Like, how did you get to us? What's it been like? And just, whatever you feel like talking about. And, I might interrupt you if you tend to be like Mike and Alonzo, but we'll
Yeah, well, absolutely. So my journey as a cloud architect, it's just definitely been something that I can say has taken time. I feel like the reason why, and not only myself, but I know a lot of other students, the reason why they have just an ample amount of energy to continue to propel themselves forward is because the start of their journey meant so much to them. And then being able to self-reflect and then see that foresight in being able to be not only a profoundly successful cloud architect, but the bigger picture is what change can we create? And so for myself, just with the journey in tech, so I was actually blessed to grow up in a public school system that had computer days. Safe to say, I was the best in my class, but I loved it, right? And so, in that, what I learned is that what technology just in itself does is it truly allows you to express your creativity. Not only does it allow you to express your creativity, but with the intelligence that you acquire on your journey, what you create is just that much more magnificent and that much more incredible. And so fast forwarding from my elementary school days of being a proficient technology class student, when I was in middle school, MySpace was like the Facebook of today. And it's funny, right? If you remember MySpace, a lot of us were low-key software engineers coding our pages, right? And we loved it. And it was exciting and it came naturally. But what happened is when MySpace essentially was taken over by Facebook as far as popularity and usage, that outlet of creativity essentially kind of disappeared as well. And so when I got to college, I was able to essentially reignite that fire. As like I've told Chris before, so my background as far as my college degrees, I'm a dual degree bachelor's in science with microbiology and Spanish. So long story short, papers on papers on papers. And Mike knows this, right? Just being in the medical field and how important it is to document and how important it is to ensure that your sources are organized in a format to when upon their submission, they're credited. And so I distinctly remember my university, we kind of had like a Uber for like our university with go-karts. So if you were on campus and you were at the library, and we used to almost like literally sleep at the library. So leaving the library at 3:00 at night, of course, I'm a lady and my lady friends as well would take advantage of the resource that our campus had. Now, I can remember, nights where I'm on my way home and I maybe not have finished my assignment. I maybe have not finished my paper. I wanted to make more touches to it before I submitted it to my lab IA or before I submitted it to my professor. And what I realized is, oh my gosh, I don't have to be tied down to my laptop using Microsoft Word. I could be on the back of this go-kart at night going, maybe 20 miles per hour, how fast it goes. And I can work on my assignments, right? Now, just disclaimer, I am not promoting procrastination. I have learned so much since then. However, it does show how powerful it is when you have these different technologies that enable you to not only increase efficiency, but the speed in either deployment in the cloud or submission for a microbiology student or a Spanish student like myself. And so once I started having these realizations, to me, it truly resparked my passion for technology, but specifically with the cloud, because I just see a world of possibilities that I truly believe that we are at the beginning stages of tapping into that gold mine. And so I'm excited because there are so many things that we will be able to and continue to invent, right? And just think about it. There were times where there wasn't a Google Drive to where you could access your files, whether you're in college and it's a paper or you're a business and it's a document, right? Before that, we had Microsoft on our laptops. And before that, we had typewriters. So it's important for us to recognize our progression and allow that to inspire new inventions and new ideas that allow us to say, you know what? Yeah, we've been doing it this way, but we can actually make this more efficient. We can actually make this faster. And more importantly, we can actually access more resources to help our community. Prefacing that specifically on what that looks like, I actually just watched a TED Talk. And the title of the TED Talk was The Future of Cloud Computing and AI. And Alonzo, I know on the last episode, on previous episode, we had talked about how we just so happened to have dreams about the cloud and the AI, just how cool it was to wake up from that and just have that breath of fresh air as far as your passion being reignited. And in the TED Talk video, he talked about how there's an idea when it comes to AI technology that there's fear with that, right? That robots are going to take over and we're just going to lose all control. But at the end of his presentation, he was able to proudly say, now that you know why cloud computing is important and how it serves, you will no longer associate it with fear. You will now associate it with gratitude, because cloud computing and technologies are the reason why human trafficking has been able to be cracked down in a bigger capacity than we've ever seen. I actually am a part of a nonprofit organization that takes care of those who have been human trafficked and homeless and abused and all of the sorts. And guess what powers those organizations? Technology. What do we put our databases on? The cloud, right? And so that to me is why, you know, and not just for myself, but I empower everyone to truly, truly meditate on this. When you're learning about load balancers or containers and you want to rip your hair out because it just might not click the first time, when you're learning about why you having different resources and different reasons is so important, when you meditate on the bigger picture, I find that it actually helps you align and recenter to why this is important to you in the first place. And so with that being said, I'm so grateful that I not only have a beautiful community with me, but with our community together, we will continue to make phenomenal trailblazing change. And that is so, 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 so exciting to be a part of.
Wow.
I'm going to pick up on this for a second, Eva. First, I love that. And the reason I'm going to pick up on it is, and I want everybody to hear, why is Eva an architect and not an engineer? Everything she talked about was what the technology could do, what it can enable, how it can change lives. That's what architects do. Engineers build it. We figure out what it can do. Now, Eva, I'll tell you how I started in technology. So as a rule, most things came relatively easy for me. I'd be able to pick up a book, read it, and learn it. I'd give a speech. It was relatively easy. Do you know what was not easy for me? Using my hands for anything. So in my senior year of high school, I signed up for wood shop, metal shop, drafting, electronics, you name it. I signed up for all of them. And as you can imagine, and you know me, I'm probably not that good with my paws doing things. So I'm about 3 months into a drafting class, and I can't draw a straight line with a straight edge. I can't draw anything with an ellipse. I can't do anything. And the teacher, who actually had a PhD, pulls me aside and he says, you know, Michael, he says, I've never had a conversation like this. He said, you are the nicest, most well-respected student in my class. He said, you're probably one of the smartest I've ever had in this course too. He said, but how do you think you're doing? And I said, not great. And he said, Not great would be the biggest compliment I could possibly give you. He said, you work hard. And he said, I don't want to give you a D or an F because you're this bad at it. But you, Mike, seriously, get a job where you don't have anything to do with mechanical anything. And then he said, there's two options for you. So you clearly can't draw a straight line. He said, we've got this brand new computer that can do something called computer-aided drafting and design. Nobody knows how to use it here. It's a computer here. Or you can drop the class and do something else. I suggest you drop the class and do something else, but I think you might be the guy to figure out CAD. Well, I figured out CAD pretty much overnight. I then started teaching people how to design PC boards on CAD. I finished the electronics course in the first 2 weeks of the semester. I then taught everybody in that school how to use computer-aided drafting and design. Wow. And that's how I learned computers.
Well, now I know what CAD is. I never knew what CAD stood for.
And that's how I learned it. And that's how I got into computers. Before that, I had nothing. I learned how to type on a typewriter. So that's what I learned how to use. My first phone that wasn't mounted inside of an ambulance was this big bag that was like this big, that weighed like 15 pounds, that had a long cord.
Yeah.
And I paid 50 cents a minute to use it peak and 36 cents a minute off peak hours. Yeah. But no, so Eva, that's why I wanted to highlight that. That's what architects do. And see, she's excited about changing things with technology.
Yeah.
If she had talked about in EBS volume for the next 3 hours, not only would I feel like I'm going to die, but no executive is going to hear that without dying. And that's all engineering. And, you know, we need to have somebody that knows how to attach block storage to a virtual machine. Sure. But that's not architecture. That's engineering.
Yeah. Yeah. I really loved what Eva had to say. I've heard parts of it before in my conversations with her, but before I get into what I picked up from that, I think it's very funny. So my high school that I went to a private high school, like not like some, $60,000 a year private high school, just a private school in the middle of the country, like out in the middle of nowhere. But when I was in high school in 2003, we took typewriting on a typewriter while going home and playing on MySpace.
Oh wow! Oh wow!
So we had typewriting. My class was the last class to have an actual typewriting class at the school. Like that, after that, they had no more typewriting. The funny thing is, they had a keyboarding or a computer class also, but they also had typewriting. And then we would go home and play with our MySpace pages with code. And so I never thought about it until you just talked about typewriting and MySpace like they were like decades apart. No, they are not. But what I picked up from what Eva had to say about, and it's obvious that there's a drive behind why she wanted to go into cloud, and particularly cloud architecture. But and I pick up on this because I see all the questions on all the Q&A sessions. Your passion and you having something that drives you to being a cloud architect ties right into when people ask Mike, what should I do? Should I do cloud engineering or should I do cloud architecture? So what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Go out there and do it. Yeah. If you want to change the world as it relates to human trafficking, boom, go use your resources and knowledge in this particular field, even if it's not cloud. You could be a detective, investigative detective, and go put, if that's your passion, it's all about what drives you. And I everybody has something that drives them. And it's also important to have people like Mike who ask you, well, what do you want to do?
Right.
Right.
Well, what is it that interests you? I had a boss, and I think I shared this with Mike. And if I didn't share it with Mike made a post almost a year ago now on LinkedIn about your someone that you look up to or that inspires you. I can't remember what it was, but I think it was a boss or a leader or someone that you respect and that you look up to.
I remember that one.
I can't remember. I've got to go
Yeah,
find
I
it.
actually
It was in
mentioned there were 4
September.
people.
It
I
was in
talked about
September.
Francis, who was my executive coach, who actually was, and I talked about Pat Finn, who's probably the best leader I've ever met, leading large organizations. He was an SVP at Cisco. I actually had you in there, Chris, because I was so grateful for the way you actually came in and helped out so much.
Yeah.
And I also there was somebody else there. Oh, Heidi West. Heidi West is a business executive and a leader. She and I worked together at Cisco. Wow. Talk about a leader in technology. So, those are the 4 people that probably shaped me the most.
Yeah, but what it was about that post is you told us, anybody, not just people in your program, just us on LinkedIn, the people that saw the post, you told us to say something about whoever our versions were. And I said something, and then I'm like, wait, this guy's not on LinkedIn. So I called him. It was a boss of mine who, if I have my way, we're going to have on the show one day. He's not in the tech field at all. He has a State Farm agency, insurance agent, and he had just taken over the office, and I had joined shortly after he took over. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had gotten laid off from my first job during the recession back in 2008. My first job out of college, I got laid off. And so I went to work for him. And he started off, he said, if you ever realize that this is not what you want to do, come to me and we'll figure something out. And I went to him 6 months later. I was like, yep, this is not what I want to do. And we worked together on a solution for me to get out, while at the same time helping him with transitioning someone else in. But it goes back to it. You need people like Mike and like Patrick, my former boss, to be open to the idea of, I don't have the answers.
Right.
I don't have the answer for everything. Sometimes it's you and what you're passionate about and what you want to do. And similar situation. He didn't exactly ask me what I wanted to do, but he said, hey, I know that this may not be what you want to do. And if you ever realize it's not what you want to do, come and talk to me.
And for me, it's really important to do what you want to do. See, I went out there. I love being an EMT paramedic. I enjoyed it. But here's the thing. I had to work upwards of 100 hours a week just to make my bills. And I didn't enjoy that. So I became a nurse. And I hated it. I'm a hardcore martial artist. I've done Olympic weightlifting competitively and powerlifting competitively. For the first week as a nurse, I cried myself to sleep every day. Yeah. I was so sad. I was so miserable. I was embarrassed to tell my wife. You know what she says? She says, dear, if you don't like it, do something else. So then I actually was going to become a physician. And that was the time where they were starting the first of the managed care, and doctor salaries went from good to basically zero. So I asked a half a dozen cardiologist friends of mine, and they said, become a nurse practitioner, you earn the same thing and you won't have any debts. And I got a free scholarship. So I did that. And you know what? I still like caring for patients, and occasionally I volunteer and practice internal medicine. But you know what? I don't want to do that all living. Yeah. Dealing with those insurance companies is miserable. I like doing something else. So I changed it. And when people call me and say, Mike, I've done this and this and this and this and this and this, I say, okay, why are you telling me that? Tell me what you would like to do. And they say, but I've done this and this and this and this. And I say, look, 2 days ago, one of my students, Ronald, who's a pastor, just got hired as a cloud architect. And I had another student who came from Cameroon when he was 15 years old, hasn't even graduated college, and he's working as AWS as a solution architect. And I got somebody else that's doing geospatial imaging that's now working as a cloud architect. Your past does not define your future.
Boom. Yeah.
Alonzo worked in marketing before he worked on managing cloud products. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Your past is not knowing your future. What defines your future is what do you want to do and how hard are you willing to work to get there?
Yeah.
That's it.
So before I ask Eva another question, do you have anything you want to throw into the conversation, Alonzo?
Yeah, I was just, I'm still on, I'm elated about Eva's energy and her being here. I love listening to her speak. we've conversed through chat, through Slack all the time, but having an opportunity to hear her passion, hear her ability to express herself in such a wonderful, multi-dimensional way, it's enriching. So say for instance, I just got here, it's been probably been about a year since I've been here. So, and then you are inspired by Mike, you're inspired by yourself, Chris, and then it's almost like you graduate out, but you see the new invigorated blood come in, and to see and to hear their passion, I get hyped, and I am excited about being a part of Go Cloud Careers and being here and doing all sorts of wonderful things for the organization. And it's just like, that is almost like the reward of being here, is to see the energy. It's almost, it's cyclic. It's all inclusive. You put in, you get out, and people start joining the wheel of positivity, the wheel of growth, the wheel, anything you want to equate to how it is in this environment. And everyone can speak to that specifically themselves, but that is, and I digress because I'm focused on all this energy here. But when it comes to doing your passion, like say for instance, I love art. I love graphic design, logo design. I did illustration, character concepts. I did characters for a cereal campaign. I drew them out, colored them. I did all sorts of wonderful things. I loved art. I love graphic design. I love being able to draw out a concept, present it to the group, present it to the leadership, and be able to illustrate and share what my thoughts of and how I executed it from concept to completion. But the hours was like EMT. It was horrible. It's like you say, for instance, you draw out this entire campaign, it gets shot to hell, excuse my language. And then you have to go beat back up with the team, create that solution, 9 to 5. No, never heard of it. So you're going to be up there upwards to 1, 2 in the morning to get that concept ready to go for the new leg and the new conversation with leadership, to hopefully feel that once you pitch it, it'll be successful and you'll see it in some sort of TV commercial or on the billboard. So to my point, I loved it, but it wasn't paying the bills. But now I found something that pays the bills and I love it as well. I had to go from a dramatic shift from a creative mind to a logical mind, and being able to incorporate all that I've learned, to be able to speak to people, be able to not be afraid to have a conversation, regardless of their pay grade or how they look on the org chart, and be able to present who you are, how you can identify with that product, and how you and your confidence can drive home that solution for that organization or that C-suite, and say, I'm the person for the job. So I definitely, I can relate to that, Eva. I can relate to that, Chris. And Mike, we've had so many conversations, and he's not only my friend, he's like a mentor to me. He is a mentor to me. So he said, do this, don't do that. And he provided that type of guidance that I needed to add more polish to a presentation. So when you have this around you, when you have this at your fingertips, and we can't quantify, and I'm sure people can, the value that he presents here. When I first started, look, I'm not getting paid. I want to help. I want to be a part of this solution that you've presented to me when I've gone all over the internet looking for the guy like you. So
yeah.
It's like, Mike, we had conversations, man, and you have to take a bow, my man, because you've done so many awesome things, and I can say it for myself because you'll help transform and push me out of marketing into project management, product ownership, into the cloud. And that, if anyone understands that is like one side of the spectrum to the other. So it was a sojourn, if you will, to get there. So, Chris, you said I was shy. I'm not. I said what I needed to say.
Well, I know Mike wants to add something in real
I
fast.
want to add one thing with Eva, but before I get that, I want to stop the most dangerous rumor I've ever seen. And the question is asked from Basan. Here's the thing, Basan. If you want to be a doctor and you become a nurse first, it does not make you a good doctor.
So
and if you want to be an airplane pilot and you decide to become a flight attendant for 10 years first, that doesn't teach you how to fly a plane. And what an engineer does and an architect does are so different that it's easier for me to take a medical person and get them a cloud architect job than it is to take a cloud engineer, because it's a completely different job in so many different ways. So you don't need to become a good cloud engineer first. It's the most ridiculous reason, because if you get good at coding, and we architects do design and sales, well, that doesn't make you better. If anything, it trains your brain to think a different way, which makes you worse.
And it reduces your socialization with any of the presentators. So
no, train for the job you want.
The question is first. So the question is, to become a good cloud architect, you have to be first a very good cloud engineer. Is that a true statement? So that's what we're answering.
That's what we're talking about. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I didn't read.
Oh, you did not read the question. That's why I'm here.
So Basan, don't do that if you want to be a cloud engineer. And if you've got a huge cloud engineering resume and you apply for a cloud architect job, we're going to have to remove half of the cloud engineering and all turn it into architecture stuff, or you won't be hired. Because when people want a cloud architect, they want an architect. And when they want an engineer, they want an engineer. So before we get back to Eva, I wanted to say something, guys. Alonzo's been a hiring manager. I'm a hiring manager. Chris has been a hiring manager. When we heard Eva speak, I've asked probably 20,000 hiring managers and about 50,000 recruiters over the years, what do you want in the perfect employee? You know what they tell me? They someone that's competent first. They say someone they can trust. And then they say, I want someone energetic and enthusiastic and passionate about the work. Then they want someone that's willing to go above and beyond. They're looking for someone that's called an energizer, that walks in the room and raises the energy in the room. And they're looking for a team player. So could you interview Eva, realistically speaking, if she's even partially competent, and not hire her? You can't. You're going to hire her every time. So that's the key. I've interviewed 5,000 people in my career. And I'll tell you what, I hired 10. 3 of them were like Eva. But they weren't like Eva in this way. 3 of them had no knowledge of technology whatsoever, but they had an Eva personality. And I hired them anyway, just because they were like Eva in personality. You know who my 3 most successful trainees were of all those times? The 3 people that had the Eva personality that I chose to train, because they were so capable, so wonderful, and so great. Once they learned the little skills, which were easy, everybody desired them. They went everywhere. So, Chris, I'm going to go back to that, but I wanted to highlight those special traits and why they're so valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I truly do appreciate that. And, for me, I find, we talk a lot about leadership. And especially from our perspective of, being in emergency medicine, I truly find that translating in why you're passionate about doing your best, right? At the firehouse, we have some firefighters that are on the PS4 or on the Xbox. And then we have some firefighters and EMTs that are sitting down at the kitchen table and they're going through Quizlets or they're, right? And so I really do appreciate you saying that, because it's that energy that not only allows you to propel, but as a leader, you work and you serve with those that you're around as a privilege in that position. And so just imagine all the students that are learning about the leadership and learning about that energy and being able to bring that passion. We actually had an example of that today with Daniel. That oh my gosh, like literally that example was so, like everybody felt it, right? Just to preface those who were in class today, Mike asked one of our students to explain a function of technology. And then he switched it and said, okay, now tell me why I should buy your pen, right? Or why should I buy this phone, right? Just something simple. And you literally felt the energy of him just giving different points of why it will benefit you, just everything. And it's that piece of it that for me, I find that sparks invention. Because when you're passionate about what you understand, or when you're passionate about learning more, it actually opens an abundance of doors that align to the frequency of invention, which is what we are talking about today, right? The implementation. And also, too, just to go back to what y'all had said, I was actually told not only that, being a cloud architect is something that, you have to have 20 years in the game before you can even think about doing that. I was also told the same thing. You had to be a cloud engineer, right? And get your experience in that a couple years, and then you'd elevate to being a cloud architect. But I like to dig. I love to research. I'm a scientist, right? So I just kept digging, and then I hit a gold mine with our program. And so I really do appreciate that y'all touched on that, because I understand that there might be some miscommunications with that. But if you keep digging for the answers that you seek, the answers you seek are seeking you as well. And if you're here today, that's just a beautiful example of that. So yes, thank you so much.
And I love that, but that's the thing. She's got a passion and she's pursuing it. When I went to, and people tell me I was crazy, and people have been telling me I'm crazy my whole life. But when I first went into tech, I told everybody I was going to be a network engineer. And you know what? They laughed at me. They said, you have to be a network admin and go stop at help desk and do all this. And I said, no, I don't. And they said, how are you going to learn this? I said, you want to tell me how working in help desk is going to teach me ABGP, IBGP, and it's going to teach me QoS, priority queuing, weighted fair queuing? You want to explain that to me, how answering somebody's is a paper on, is it plugged in, is going to help me with OSPF and link state algorithms? Nobody could explain it to me. So I said, okay, you're wrong. And then everybody else said, you got to learn the code. And I said, why do I need to learn the code? I want to do networking. So I said, you're wrong. And then the next set of people said, you have to do this, this, and this. So here's what I did. I called 50 recruiters and said, what's the perfect employee? They told me. I then said, okay, what do I need to do? I then went on my first interview and was hired. And I wasn't hired as an admin. I wasn't hired as help desk. I wasn't even hired as a network engineer. I was hired as a senior network engineer, because I had that Eva enthusiasm. And you know what I did every day when I didn't know? I went home and read 1,000 pages a day, but I did it until I was good.
All right, now 15 minutes later, I'm going to get back to the program here. So I was going to ask Eva something specific, but then Alonzo had to mention the word hype, and it reminded me of a conversation that Eva and I had. So I'm going to segue. I'm going to sojourn into this topic for just a few minutes, and then I'll get back to the question. Which is tied. The question I'll eventually want to get to is related to Vinay's question in the chat box. So the first thing that I want you to talk about, Eva, is you told me recently that there was something in particular that gets you hyped and gets you ready to study if you're not in the mood, or you're not sure about what to do. Do you remember us talking about that?
Yes, I do.
So what is it? And I know it's something fairly new that we started doing. So what do you do to get hyped?
Can I play it?
What is it? Hold on. We're talking about
it doesn't have anything that we're going to get fined that would be,
No.
Yeah, go ahead. Have fun. Have some fun.
Okay, so I know, and I talked about this in class. So one of the things that I wanted, and I always do my best to empower our students and our community, is to really spend time with your subconscious mind. When you are immersing yourself in your passion, there might be times where you feel dismayed, and I can understand and absolutely empathize with, us on our journey, and whether you are, at your first year being a cloud architect, or you are at your CIO level, right? Sourcing the passion and the energy to continue to fuel your progression is something that constantly gets refined. So I believe, Chris, with what you were talking about as far as like the source and just kind of getting that cheerleader, essentially, in the first episode of our webinar, Alonzo said something, and long story short, it hit my heart. And I shared it to some of our students as well. I have it pulled up here right now, so I'm happy you asked me because I'm more than happy to share this with our community. But this what I'm about to play, and it's very quick, is just an example of what it looks like to find what your source of encouragement is. For me, encouragement is not only a core value, but a daily priority. I am a strong believer and advocate of consciously reprogramming your subconscious mind and keeping triumph at the forefront, right? Because sometimes you get lost in the clouds. Things get cloudy and it's hard to see that foresight. And so what I'm about to play here is one of the things that truly helps me see beyond the clouds and tap into that foresight, into why we're doing this in the first place and keeping that energy going. So here we go.
Change, and I want the same. So, thank you, Mike. Alonzo, any last words from you? Coming from, you've seen and you've heard, you experienced, Mike, but coming from someone who started in the community just like everyone else, it works. Enjoy the community like everyone else. It works. It works.
I love that, Eva.
Like that, and just that, I'm telling you, like, and I know it's funny, but I told Chris, I said, listen, Chris, like, just the fact that Alonzo and I were able to relate on having a dream about the cloud and trying to figure out how to create, these architectures that are highly durable and highly available, and then with the AI, right? But hearing this, right, one thing that is unique about our community is that we have an abundance of success all around us. You look left and right, and there is an abundance of success being generated. And so I say this to the students that, like I said earlier, if you're ripping your hair out, trying to figure out how all this works, one of the things Mike says when you're a new student is you're going to be lost for the next 2 weeks, and that's totally fine. Just absorb. When you start to feel your anxiety, let's work on our box breathing. Let's work on our mindfulness. Let's work on recentering. But remember, you are just absorbing. And so I just find, like I said, it works. It works, right? And so it's one of those things that it works if you allow it to work as well, right? It works if you work it. And so I just hope that empowers anybody who just needed that reinforcement. I find a lot of times, regardless of whatever level you're at in your success, in your journey, that source of encouragement and that source of reinforcement is powerful. So, Alonzo, I listen to this every day.
Wow.
And Eva, how about, like, yesterday it was Raul that got an enterprise architect job, and the day before that it was Ronald, who was a pastor who just got a cloud architect job. All that stuff has got to be helpful too.
And what she didn't say is that she also told me that she watches the videos sometimes. The success.
Oh yes. Okay, yeah, that too. Yes. So I encourage everybody, before you start your study session, I know we all be studying for 4 or 5 hours at a time, right? But before you start your study session, give yourself the chance.
I'll put the link in here.
Yes, give yourself a chance to line up the energy and then take action. If you don't remember anything today, take the intentive decision to line up the energy and then take action. Watch a cloud hired testimony before you study. And watch it after you study too. And if you don't watch it after, at least promise me you're going to watch it before. I promise you, please, when you do that, come back to me. Let me know how it's changed your studying. It's something you just have to feel and experience. But I'm grateful that we have that. I'm grateful that we get to celebrate, right? I'm a strong believer of when my neighbor is successful, instead of thinking, why them and not me? I'm thinking, wow, okay, I'm up next, right? So when you listen to those videos, practice what it's going to be like when you're on this side and saying, I'm cloud hired. What are you going to wear, right? Like, truly visualize that, because when it comes to fruition, you're going to know, you know what? I remember Eva told me to line up the energy and take action and visualize, and wow, I'm doing it, and I get to celebrate with my community. Another success added, right? And so, yes, I empower all of you. watch a cloud hired video before you study. If you're
And
studying,
you know what? I'm so thankful for Chris for making these. You know,
Yes.
people that know me, it's like, Mike, you're on the phone with the CEO, you're on the phone with the hiring manager, you're on the phone with these 60 recruiters. I'm like, that's how I make sure my students are exactly what hiring managers want. And when Chris decided to put this together, I was so grateful. I didn't even see what the things looked like.
Yeah.
And for example, I was so busy, like, I know you work with Joe a lot. Joe came to us. He was a network engineer like me. He said, I want to work for AWS. Inside of a month, he got a senior cloud architect job at AWS. And he now coaches and works with some of the other amazing students like Eva. So that's really what it's about.
Yes,
When she's saying family, it's a community where one graduates and they bring their friends with them to the same job, or they tutor the people. It's not like, if I ran this like a normal company and charged, $30,000, which would be normal pricing for what we do instead of $9.99 or less, and we ran it with professionals and we wore a suit every day, it wouldn't be the fun. We wouldn't have the community. By being able to take people from all over, I feel like we've got to convert. So what's the community feel like to you?
Dang, you stole my question.
Oh, sorry about that.
But yeah, Eva, from your perspective as a student, but before you get to that, I want to add, for me, making those videos, that was a life-changing experience, being able to do and continuing to do those interviews. Because guess what? I've got like 7 new people I haven't been able to interview yet. It's an amazing experience making it. But
Wow.
yeah, if you'll share with us what it's like, aside from the Korean barbecue that you guys do. But
That sounds really good.
Yeah. So
Really
yes,
good.
so one thing that is awesome is that we have and are continuing to, and of course will continue to, definitely get together and just experience each other's energy. Yes, Abigail, our community is strong. Abigail is actually one of the first people that I truly connected with, and we thank each other for each other every single day. And that's just one example of the different relationships that have essentially been duplicated in that matter. As close as I am to Abigail and how much she pours into me and how much we're able to encourage each other, sending each other affirmations on a daily basis, right? Like it's a constant surge of positive energy. And that's the biggest takeaway, is knowing that, if you feel like you fell off, all you have to do is log into class, log into Slack, and that source of energy will be channeled through just like that, just because you allowed yourself to show up. And so I'm grateful because it's genuine. I'm grateful because it's a safe space, right? There's no dumb questions. That's actually one of the first things that I learned in EMT school. Literally, like, there's no dumb questions.
Mm-hmm.
And, with that being said, it allowed that to be more of an enriching experience. So then when I came here with my fellow first responder and that principle being duplicated in our environment, I just had that much more of an abundance of gratitude, because it is important to know that you are in a safe space. You can ask anything, and not only will you be answered, but you'll have people like me sending you resources, right? Like I have a bunch of our security experts and data experts. And if you know me personally, I'm blowing up your DMs on Discord, on LinkedIn, all kinds of resources. Yeah, right. And I love doing that because I love just knowing that I'm hitting a gold mine, and that I get to use these resources and change the lives of whoever else gets to benefit. And that's just another thing that's beautiful about our community, is that we're very generous. We are very, very generous. So that being the second thing, we are genuine, we are generous, and most importantly, we are a safe space of constant encouragement, constant upliftment, and constant support. And that's just, it's priceless. It truly is priceless. I'm grateful.
Wow.
Yeah. So I want to take the opportunity to segue. There was a question from Vinay a while back that I think this would be a good segue for. And normally I would tell Mike to take this one, but whoever wants to take this one, Mike, if you want to take the start. But I think there's a opportunity for different people to give insight into what we're talking about here.
Okay, so realistically speaking, what we try to do is have 2 versions of every course, and here's the reason why. I like to teach live, and all of our $9.99 courses have live instruction. Eva's in class, I'm in class, Chris is in class. We're all working together, and I love that. And what we do is we've got 3 live classes. We get to know each other. We do architectural work, leadership work. And then in between the classes, my students watch pre-recorded videos. They do homework assignments, and then my students do labs. And they don't do useless labs like setting up a WordPress website. My students build clouds from scratch, and they do things that hiring managers will hire them for. So all my students do that. And in the $9.99 class, people go to class. But, if somebody can't afford the $9.99 class or can't make the class times, they can buy the $4.99 version of that class, which is basically we take all the classes, we record them, and then you get access to them. So you get all the identical training program. Same labs, you're building the same cloud, you get access to the same pre-recorded materials, the same Slack channel for communication and collaboration, the same community. You just don't come to the live classes and ask questions. And that's the difference between the half-price one and the full-price one. Well, no matter what, though, you'll get an education.
Yeah.
No matter what, if you do the work, in the end, you should be cloud hired.
Right.
Yeah. And we introduced that $4.99 one specifically for the price point and the time differentiation, because we're not, this big organization that's charging $15,000-$20,000 for a 12-week boot camp. We try to keep it low as possible, and so to do that, this is one of the things that we did, because we want to make our community as accessible as possible to everybody. And if you're with us here on YouTube right now, obviously we're trying to make our community as accessible as possible.
Right.
But we're doing free boot camps.
That's what.
Our
Exactly.
our philosophy is that the basic tech knowledge should be free. And so
let's not forget about the handbook as well, Chris.
Right. Yeah. So and I know Eva took part in the handbook also, along with like 60 other people. And I've seen some people maybe ask the question, how are people able to contribute to a book if they didn't get a certification? Well, because they're working alongside people that have been doing this for 20 years. Yeah. and they're just because you don't have a certification doesn't mean you're not a cloud architect. Look at Jeffrey. Jeffrey got hired, they wasn't certified. He's not, now he's got his AWS associate. He doesn't even have his professional, and he's still got a 6-figure job as a cloud architect. He's not certified.
Yeah, and I know $600,000 network architects that are really great but have no certification.
Yeah.
So when we have books, we have experts write them, and some of the people doing databases in our book had 20 years of database experience and multiple master's degrees, and some people are new. But certification does not mean competency at all. No. Certification is the exact opposite of competency. Certification is the name of a service and how to configure it. Oh wait, architects don't configure services. So it's completely irrelevant nonsense for us. We're systems designers. The only 2 architecture certifications that exist are TOGAF and the Cisco Certified Design Expert. Everything else is completely irrelevant to us.
I love it.
Yeah. So what we do, as Chris said, we give away places for the technology. We don't give away the architecture, but we give away the certifications for free. We teach how to put the pieces together. So, look, we teach you how to play a violin. We teach you how to play the guitar and the drums. We give that away for free. Now, the architect is the conductor that knows how to put it together. That's what we do in our training courses. Now, the architect is an executive, and if you don't have an executive skills, you won't be hired. So we teach the leadership, sales, executive presence. And the reason we have to do this is as follows. If you take a really good engineer and say, guess what? You're so great at configuring things. Now you're the manager. You may have had to hire the worst manager in the world that was just a good engineer. And if you promote a cloud engineer because they're good engineers and say, guess what? Now you're an executive and they don't have executive skills, they're going to be the worst cloud architect in the world. Just like the best techie may be the worst manager in the world, or they could be the best, but you don't know. So that's why we're doing things. So that's what we try and do. And then Chris, I'll go back to you. I just wanted to go there for a second.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit. There was this topic that I wanted to talk about. And everyone on this call came from outside the tech industry. So I think there's an opportunity to have a discussion about how your previous experience, whether it be professional or personal, and it kind of ties back into what Eva was talking about being passionate about, how your previous experiences can guide your inventiveness when it comes to cloud designs, cloud solutions, cloud projects, cloud implementations, things that can be done on the cloud. I'm going to go to a non-cloud thing that Mike always talks about. Mike always talks about how, being a problem solver for your client, essentially, doesn't always mean a solution in the cloud.
No.
Go buy a new ice machine, and your nurses stop having to go to 50 floors away to get ice, and it saves them $250,000 a year, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So it's. I think it all ties in together, but it's your talk about previous experiences and how they shape your inventiveness. And I can only imagine Eva, having not had much time in the tech or cloud space at all, I'm sure she's got all kinds of ideas about what can be done.
And that's the key. The key is to come from outside of tech. Yeah. So I like to use two examples, and then I'm going to put one, and I'm going to use it specifically for Eva as it comes to high availability based upon her back end. I'm going to ask her there, and I'm going to show you why Eva would never use a single cloud ever based upon her background, nor should any of you ever. But her background makes her a great architect, and we'll talk about why. But medicine is, when I learned to practice in internal medicine, that's when I learned architecture. And here's why. What do you do in internal medicine? The patient comes in and says, I have a problem. It's called the chief complaint. So Alonzo comes in, he says, Mike, my throat hurts. So I say, Alonzo, what makes your throat better? What makes it worse? And he say, it's bad if I scream. It's good if I drink tea. So I say, don't scream and drink tea. And then I say, hey, Alonzo, can I examine you? And he's like, of course, Mike, that's why I'm here. I take an otoscope, look in his ears, his nose, his throat. I say, wow, that's awfully red in there. Let me listen to your heart and your lungs. And okay, so what did I do? He came with me with a problem. I basically asked him some questions, and then I examined him. I examined his systems, circulatory system, cardiovascular system, etc., respiratory system. Then I make a diagnosis, and then I prescribe a plan. Now, in his case, the plan will be amoxicillin, 500 milligrams 4 times daily, but that's medicine. Now, what does an architect do? You go to your client and they say, I've got this problem, Mike. Minimum wage went up and we need to lay people off. Or our sales are sluggish and therefore I need you to help sales. Or wait, we have a new product and we can't get it developed quickly enough. Can you come up with a communication and collaborations platform for us? Or they say, Mike, we're just losing money. Can you evaluate our business? So from there, they're telling me their problem. It's a chief complaint. What do I then do? I say, can I examine your balance sheet, your financial statements? Can I look at your tech? Can I look at what your people do, their workflows? And they say, yes, that's like Alonzo did. Then what do? I make a diagnosis, and now I make a treatment plan called an architecture. Hey, wait, the doctor interviewed the client, the architect interviewed the client. The doctor asked some questions, the architect asked some questions. The doctor made a diagnosis, the architect made a diagnosis, and the doctor made a plan, and an architect made a plan. Same job. Now, that's what I learned. Now, being a paramedic, I learned what it's like being in the field, where you're in the middle of nowhere and 300 kilometers away from somebody in a mass casualty situation. And when your bottle of oxygen runs out, you got a problem. Or if you got 2 patients. So, Eva, pretend today is your first day as a cloud architect. And someone says, Mike, I want to stick everything in AWS instead of splitting between AWS and Azure. What would your experience as an EMT teach you about single points of failure?
Thank you, Mike. Yes. So the ultimate goal is to be as available as possible. And what you being on a single cloud does, unfortunately, is the complete opposite. For example, if we are on Zoom and your Wi-Fi goes off. Okay. Well, do you have data on your phone? You do. Awesome. What do most people do if their Wi-Fi goes off on their phone, on their Wi-Fi goes off on their laptop. They usually just turn on their personal hotspot. Their personal hotspot might not be as fast, but it's fast enough for them to continue what they were accomplishing. And so just imagine if you didn't have a hotspot. Now relate that back to single cloud and multi-cloud. Imagine how disastrous it would be if a hospital system didn't have their backup hotspot, for this analogy, comparing it to the multi-cloud. So that's why it's so important, because you having a single cloud, which will then be a single point of failure, will just create such a catastrophe. And of course, our intention is to improve efficiency. And so let's take our focus onto how the multi-cloud solution will then enable that. And so I really appreciate you saying that, Mike, because it's true. And those that don't have a tech background, or if we're saying multi-cloud versus single cloud, if you need help understanding the magnitude of why it's important, just think about it. If your Wi-Fi went off right now and you were in the middle of submitting your college assignment, right? The paper, your thesis, but your Wi-Fi went off and you didn't have a hotspot, imagine how catastrophic that would be, and what you wish you would have been able to have to prevent you having a situation where your hands are tied. And so the importance of multi-cloud, especially in industries that require high performance and high availability, is because the show must go on. And we're going to design the strongest and the most durable and the most highly available cloud architecture that will essentially allow the show to go on in the safest way possible, especially in medicine and the medical field. It really comes down to safety, and anybody that truly has the intentions to keep their patients safe will then align to the solution that will enable them to do that, which would be a multi-cloud solution. And oftentimes it's a mixture of hybrid multi-cloud.
And honestly, Eva, that's terrific from an architecture perspective. That's not where I was headed at all. What I was headed is, as an EMT, what things did you learn that would make you a better architect? And I'll give you some examples. I learned what it's like to be in the middle of nowhere. And if your systems fail, you've got a problem. So you always have redundant systems. I've also learned that you will have a failure of something along the way. So plan on the failure and have redundant systems that are different than your primary systems.
Yeah.
What else did I learn being in the field? Well, I'm a medic. I'm a good medical medic. I'm really great at intubating people. I love medical stuff, but you know what? I'm not as good at trauma. But the guy or the girl driving the bus is better at trauma. So I learned teamwork as being a medic. And I learned one person is never good enough, two are always better. So I learned that being a medic. Now, what else did I learn as a paramedic? I learned that people are not always happy. When people are stressed or times are bad, they won't give you information. So I learned that you have to calm people down sometimes to elicit the right information. In fact, being a paramedic, I learned how to calm things down. I had to develop emotional intelligence for it. So those were the kind of lessons that I was thinking that you have in you that I know that you'd talk about. But that's your, I didn't preface you with what I was thinking. You took it down the architecture topic and it was perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me swing this back to where I was hoping to go with it. Of course, there may not be an opportunity for this discussion, but let me pose it to Alonzo.
Okay.
From your career in marketing and graphics design, what are some I don't want to say, I guess pipe dreams is, I don't know, pipe dreams is not the right word. What are some of the ideas, like the harebrained ideas that you could think of that you would want to do on the cloud with your background in marketing and graphics design in mind? Like what are you thinking? Oh, hey, yeah, I could use the cloud to solve this.
Interesting premise. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is I think that
get out of your comfort zone here.
yeah, you know what? I think I accept that challenge, and I think about, I really, not only do I like to draw, you know, and that's always been my first passion, but I also like to create stories. So imagine if we had all these, like all four of us, we create a story. It doesn't matter what genre it is, but we're able to put it up into the cloud and start building that story based on what our passions are or whatever our interests are, and being able to just store it up there and be able to start fleshing out that idea, narrate it, and be able to put a treatment together for a movie or something basic like that. But when it comes to me, I think it would be really interesting to find a way to draw out these concepts, be able to upload the high resolution frames, and being able to find some sort of Lambda step function where it could possibly animate the ideas that I have so that I can create those or use those as treatments when I'm presenting to a client. I think that would be a really great idea to do that and be able to narrate how things go. Or even, say, for instance, AWS, they have Poly, and they also have AWS recognition. So imagine if we use those types of services for AWS and be able to incorporate that in a real live stream so that we can start narrating according to the visuals of the characters that I create, so that they can get an idea of how the character can interact with the audience as a whole. I think that'll be some pretty cool ideas. So I think about, like, okay, you know, how can I utilize this? And I know this is way off the mark, but
no. I've got some great ideas off of this. I'm like, we can use recognition to notice when I'm about to pull my hair out.
Oh yeah,
or, there are certain things we could actually use it for.
You know, it's
like we just chose to use another AI platform to do what their recognition does.
Yeah, right. And it's those type of fun things that you can think about. People don't realize how ingrained the cloud is. You know, you're swiping for your card. You think about, say, for instance, I was at Best Buy for Christmas. I already purchased the item. They're waiting for me to pick it up. I go park. I look at the directions in the parking space about how I need to utilize the directions through the cloud to let them know not only I'm here, provide my identification, provide the make and model of my truck, let them know what my product is. They can give me a time frame of when they're going to come out, and then they can vet my identification against the original purchase order so that I can go home. That is some cool stuff. I mean, you think about how cloud has made everything so immensely convenient through that type of creativity, and that's what really gets me excited about, like, say, specifically, I love cloud security. So imagine if there's some sort of opportunity where we can really start locking down a lot of the personal, simplistic things that we take for granted. And I'm like, okay, we're not talking about credit cards, but anything of personal value where we can create some sort of fingerprint, if you will, to not only identify your specifics, but use that as a means of further encrypting what your personal spaces are within the cloud. And I know there's certain things about that, but if it could be focused on specifically your genetic material or something similar to that, I think it'd be really cool. And I know, you know, like I said, there's tons of stuff like that, but being able to construct that purposely for your own personal environment, for your own house, I think that would be immense. It's just those type of things that I think are just really exciting about to talk about.
Yeah, and I love that, Alonzo, and that just kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier, that when you have that seed of invention, you'll be amazed of what you create out of that and the ideas that you create out of that. And then you get the right teams together and you coordinate with that leadership, and then you'll see what you're going to give birth to, right? You know, it actually gives me an idea. So with our emergency medical background, one of the things that I was actually able to do on my journey as a medic is I became a United States Homeland Security Stop the Bleed instructor. And with that, and also being a federal emergency management agency community response team member, what I get to do is I get to teach my community on how to respond to those tragic situations and essentially how to bring that empowerment to take action. And so with that being said, one of the things that I notice in my training, and in my training, I teach my students what to do if there were to be a mass casualty shooting or a disaster or an accident. Unfortunately, especially, in our country, in America, with the casualties that have occurred, I actually, my senior year, there was one of our universities, Texas A&M. My family was there. It was a party, and of course, unfortunately, there was a mass casualty shooting. And as an EMT, and my medical community, we're kind of different in the sense that when we talk about like blood and things like that, it's something where we have to train ourselves to be super focused, because we're focused on how can we solve this, but not everybody's like that, right? And so in the videos that I was seeing with what happened at the party, a lot of my fellow classmates were honestly just running around. Everybody was completely discombobulated. No one knew what to do. Of course, we're in shock and there's trauma, but there's also that element of people just genuinely did not know what to do. And that incident continued to push me to teach my Stop the Bleed trainings and teaching our community on what to do if that were to be the case. Now, when it comes to how the cloud can enable the world of emergency medicine to run more efficiently, one of the ideas that I realized was actually inspired because I am a Stop the Bleed teacher. So what happens in mass casualty shootings, let's say, for example, a school shooting, what happens is that medics can't be on scene until the scene is safe, meaning that even though the police, of course, are the first on scene, there are patients that need immediate support that us medics don't have eyes on the inside, so to speak, until the scene is safe.
Okay.
Now, how does this relate to the cloud?
Yeah, let's go. Let's get back to the cloud. There we go.
So what I realized is we can create a solution that will enable us to have eyes on the inside, even though we're still waiting on our first responders, as far as policemen, to declare the scene as safe. What would that look like, though? Well, most of us have Androids, iPhone, WhatsApp, FaceTime. And so when I started brainstorming on the cloud and also the feedback that I get from my students, well, what if I'm in this situation and I don't have your recordings, Eva, or if I don't have your lectures from class, or I don't have the Stop the Bleed app, or I need help, I need more assistance. How can I? And to me, that was a cry from my community that was crying about having eyes on the inside. So what could that look like? We could have cloud technology that will enable patients to communicate to first responders before we get to scene. Similar to how FaceTime works, right? If you notice, a lot of times when there are disasters, everyone's pulling out their phones, right? Everyone's pulling out their phones and they're recording these incidents. But what if we could use that, what most people do, and create through cloud technology a way for that to serve the medics that are approaching the scene? Or on the flip side, if I have a patient that we are taking to the ER and I would like to find a better way to communicate to our emergency room team the state of the patient before we get there, what if we were able to have
And you know what, Eva, let's come off of this, and because you're really talking about some great technologies, but there's also a lot of laws and regulation and privacy concerns. And we could have architects and lawyers debate this for the next 15 years. So why don't we try and keep it to things that are where technology can do something where we're not getting into political topics or religious topics, like we've gone down to. So let's keep it without shooting, stabbings, and the positive training things. Yeah. So Chris, let me hand it back over to you. Eva, there's that.
It's difficult on these types of things to make sure we're not going in the wrong areas where we can get in trouble with YouTube. But yeah, so I know that there was a topic that we really wanted to talk about was how to, we were talking about this before the show, about communicating with the executive level people. It's a big part of what we talk about as cloud architects is being CXO relevant, being able to communicate effectively with stakeholders. And what we were talking about before the show was the difficulty that people might have with speaking with the executive level people, and that instead of speaking to or speaking at. So I'm going to start with Mike, although I'm not, as I said previously before we started, I don't know how much experience Mike has with this because he's got some high levels of confidence. but there's something to be said about being able to speak with people and not at people or to people in a situation, and realizing when you're doing one or the other and how to stay in that vein of speaking with people. So Mike, I'll let you start it off, and then I'll
and it's a good plan, and it's probably a little different for me. And the reason it's probably a little different for me is, like, I started out as a paramedic, then I worked as a nurse for a little while, like a week, and then I became a nurse practitioner, which I did for a little while. So I'm a little like Eva like that. And in the process of this, I was constantly talking to people. Now, I was in a position where I had to advise my patients what to do. I had a patient with AFib that needed to take Coumadin, which is coincidentally also rat poison, but it's also necessary to keep them from getting a stroke. And I'd have to go in there and I'd have to look at them and look them in the eye and feel them, and then connect to them, establish rapport, be able to show them that I was, someone that they needed to listen to. And then at the same time, watch that I wasn't talking to them, that I was just having a conversation with them. So for me, it was different because I had to do that in medical school or medical training. I was a nurse practitioner, and they teach us all that. So for us, we were taught therapeutic communication, and I think we spent 30% of our time on that. So, we spent 30% of our time learning how to talk to patients and 70% of our time learning how to care for them. And I'm thrilled for that 30%. So for me, I never really experienced that. Now, I will tell you this, when I'd go speak to executives, I felt comfortable. But when I got to speak to my peers, and at least initially, I didn't feel comfortable because they were different than me. And I didn't know why. And the reason they were different than me is I was always focusing on, the innovation, the change, the transformation. And my peers were always focusing on the tech. And to me, the tech was a tool. The tech wasn't the be all and the end all. So that's why I only related to the executives and not my peers, at least when I was in engineering. It was kind of odd.
Yeah. So Eva, I know you're fairly new in the field. But do you have what side of if you were on one side of the coin or the other, do you think you're comfortable with the speaking with, or do you think you're still on the speaking to, not quite sure side of the coin? Which one would you say you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I love that Mike truly hones in on the importance of executive presence and finding ways to speak the same language. I believe it comes down to how comfortable do you feel about how you've trained yourself to speak that same language. And so, of course, there's always room to grow and to learn, but it's actually something that I really, really look forward to, because I believe that when you collaborate and when you, of course, learn how to communicate with your C-suite team, with that executive presence, it's easier for those ideas to be translated. And so, of course, there's more to learn, and we're always getting better and better. But I actually am really excited to do so, because that to me is what enables the translation of the change that we're able to make, like Mike spoke on.
And you know,
sorry.
I love that it really translation, and it's really speaking to people in their language, whatever that language is.
Yes.
And I know, Eva, you're multilingual, which again puts you in a better position again. So because you speak more languages, even better. But yeah, that's kind of the key.
Yeah. So, Alonzo, do you want to chime in? I know you had an interesting perspective earlier.
You know, I think about, and you know, it's funny. I always have things going in my head. I don't have problems speaking with people. Like, say for instance, my background. I moved around a lot as a kid, and so once I was the outsider who became a part of the group, it was time to move again. Then I was the outsider again. Then I worked my way into becoming a part of the group, moved away again. And so that cycle continued for a while. And that, even though it wasn't because of negative experiences, because my parents, they kept getting promoted and they had to go somewhere, and then they kept going somewhere else. And so that was kind of like the negative part of it. But the positive part of it is that it helped me to adapt to any environment, helped me to meet new people, understand new people, learn how to communicate in the fashion of the group, and being able to excel in that group. And then it knocked me right back down to square one, because I had to go to another community who spoke a different community language, if you will, different interests and everything else. So that helped me to strengthen my relationship bonds. So put that, and I'm unpacking some things as I move forward, so try to stay with me on this. But that was one facet of who I am as a person. Now, me, I'm very critical of myself. I need perfection. I need to do it right. I need to get it right the first time. I need to know more than I should have known already. You see the push here. So so this is, you know, based on that facet, I don't have problems speaking with anyone. I've had a chance to speak with some people with some very, very interesting backgrounds, but I'm able to speak with them, and because I don't feel intimidated by them. I think the hardest critic that I have is myself. So if I can get past myself, no one else is a problem, because I know what drives me. I know what I'm capable of. I know what I need to do, because you have an honest assessment of who you are, what you can do, and what you need to do to get to the next level. And I understand that about myself. So being able to reflect, look at my past, understand how I was able to cultivate my learning experiences and growth, especially right here with Go Cloud Careers, understanding. And Mike, he helped me a lot. He said, you know, and this is the funny thing about it, because he says, Elonzo, you're rambling. And I could appreciate where he was going with this. So it helped me to hone a lot of what I'm doing, hone how I'm able to present to C-suite, and being able to adapt, whether it's with C-suite or with the managers or with engineering, being able to curate the communication according to the way that they can understand and receive the information. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I just realized I was muted. I'm sorry. I was talking. I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to formulate my thoughts. You know, being in a, I was about to say being in a room with you guys. I'm not in a room with you guys, but being in a environment with y'all, I got to figure out my thoughts, because y'all are just bombarding me from left and right. But so with the topic of talking with people. We deal with it a lot in our programs about the biggest aspect of it is building rapport and picking and being able to pick up the communication styles of people. And I personally have fallen into the trap in my experience of I start off speaking with people, and then I'll quickly turn. It quickly just kind of takes a turn, and all of a sudden I'm talking at them, and I don't even realize it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So, are there? Y'all may not have had any of this experience, but if you've had that experience, do you have any tips on how to make sure that you don't? Because in my experience, it might have happened when I'm speaking passionately about something, or I'm talking about something that I'm very knowledgeable about. We talk about it to an extent when we're talking about the difference between the cloud engineer and a cloud architect.
Right.
The engineer will get too down into the details or in the weeds. Or my best friend in the world can tell the most detailed story in the world, and it will take 35 minutes to tell something that took 30 seconds to happen in real life. So again, it goes back to passion and details, and the details come from your knowledge. Any tips or ideas or suggestions to help make sure that when you're presenting to the executives or the stakeholders, or when you're talking to the executives or stakeholders, to make sure you stay in that realm of a conversation and not getting into the weeds and then realizing it after you've lost the crowd.
Oh, that's interesting. And you know why I never noticed that? Or I would suggest to people, at least when I speak to someone, I am looking at the other person's eyes, their feet, their hands, their micro expressions on their face, so I can determine if they want to keep going or not. But maybe that keeps me from doing that. Doesn't everybody do that? Do they literally look the person and look at well, I guess they don't. I already answered my own question.
So, some good tips from Mike there.
And that's why, to me, it's all body language. So if I'm Eva, and you see, as a paramedic, I spent my life in the field, so I've had a lot of people try and kill me. I've disarmed a lot of people. I've had a lot of people try and stab me. If they didn't have a gun, they had a knife. If they didn't have a knife, they had a baseball bat. The paramedic shows up, poof. I'm a Krav Maga expert. I deflect the thing. I take the baseball bat away and take care of the grandmother.
That's a bit more obvious than somebody in a meeting.
Yeah, but so the point is, and that's more obvious. But the point is, when I got out of that, what I learned was when violence was going to occur. I also learned, lots of other critical things. But I took that body language and I bring it to business. I go sit in a business meeting. What is that person's feet telling me? If they're pointing to the door, he wants to get out of there. If that person's leaning forward, he likes it. If that person does this, is doing this, they don't want to hear it anymore. And I think that's part of every executive communication or architect's training is reading the person in front of you. Yeah. I know we provide some training for that, but you got to use it.
It's important. You got to know your audience before you get there. You can't if you're dressing for battle, you got to know what tools you need to bring to the battlefield. You got to understand who you're addressing, how you need to deliver the information, and how they're receptive or how they're not receptive. Sang Tzu, The Art of War, Miyamoto Musashi, The Book of the Five Rings. I really love those type of books because it creates the applications are for business as well as the battlefield. So being able to know your enemy first, or hypothetically know the person that you're trying to bring a point across. They don't have an army, but they have reservations. They don't have a suit of armor, but they are coated in a feelings of doubt about what you can do. Your job is to facilitate that communication, drive home the point, and turn that enemy into a friend. So first things first, understand who your audience is, and being able to get enough information about how you can provide that, what delivery system you would need to communicate to that group?
Yep. So we're getting towards the end of the show where we start to take questions from everybody. So before we,
I got a question already.
Do what?
I got a question already.
There you
got
go.
a question
Where
already.
did you get your communication skills?
Who?
Eva.
Eva.
I know about you. You are like you are like the oracle here, Mike. But Eva, she's
awesome, isn't she?
She has awesome communicate. Her vocabulary is phenomenal. Her
Perfect.
presence is phenomenal. I mean, it's like you're training for cloud, but I swear you're trying to be an anchor on somebody's TV show. So.
Yeah. So we'll take that question. I was gonna segue into telling Eva that we enjoyed having her here, and if she had any last words. So we'll start off with that pointed question about your communication, and then just a few last words, like a 30-second wrap up. And then we'll get into the
and
question.
then we'll take some questions and we'll answer a very obvious question, which makes us different than everyone else.
So we'll let you take that question from Alonzo, Eva.
Yes. Where did I learn my communication? My journey has consisted of me pushing through people discouraging me to speak, actually. And so I just found that every time that I was discouraged, I pushed through. Every time I felt like there might have been a moment where I was misinterpreted, I went home, reviewed, and really reflected on how I could more succinctly and clearly speak from my heart. And so I would say that is the most genuine answer I have. I do intentionally do my best to tap into speaking from my heart. And like you said as well, the receptivity, knowing your audience, paying attention to your audience, and seeing how you can interact. And so I believe if you speak from your heart and you just do your homework as far as not only your audience, but how to communicate that, you find that it's bigger than you and the conversation you're having holds so much more weight. And so that's been my experience. Thank you for asking me that.
Awesome.
Thanks for sharing that. And I love that. When you speak with authenticity and from the heart, your audience feels it and they know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So
it's and I'm, you told me to keep going. So, but it's like those experiences of like, say for instance, for me is, you're the odd man out and you have to ingratiate yourself or learn to grow in a new community. It's those negative experiences where you are able to hone and use that as a strength to become, like someone says that, your communication may have been misaligned to what they wanted to hear or whatever. I was the odd man out because I'm from a different place with a bunch of people and they couldn't understand me. They didn't know how to relate to me or whatever. So using those experiences to hone and strengthen who you are is what makes the character.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that was a great question, a great topic for Eva to end her guest appearance on. I want to thank Eva for joining us.
Yes.
And I want to thank everybody in the chat box for showing Eva such a hospitable time here.
And
I hope you love her as much as we do, because we think she's terrific.
Yes, she is terrific. So before we let Eva go, if we can get I don't know, what should we put in the chat box? Hashtag Cloud Eva.
Hashtag Eva.
Yes.
Yeah, Cloud Eva. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. Cloud Eva.
Hashtag, let's get a hashtag Cloud Eva in the chat box, and then we're gonna let Eva go. And I don't want you to go too far, Eva. We got some stuff to go over after the show, but don't go too far away.
Okay.
But we'll we'll let you go here to bring in all these.
They're so grateful
Oh,
you.
thank you,
showed
Sharon.
up. You
Thank
got. You'll let people see you.
Yes.
Because I wanted the world to see you, and Chris wanted the world to see you, and so did Alonzo. We knew who you are. Very so special.
Yeah. Yes. Great.
Love that. Thank you, Ruth.
Great.
Thank you,
Great
Sharon.
comment. Showing
Yes,
all
I
the
love
love.
you guys so much, Eugene.
And if you want to see more of Eva, join our community.
Yes.
And you'll see her because she's everywhere.
Well,
And we're thrilled to have her everywhere. Because let me tell you, she brings up everything. Eddie Patrick's over there in Cameroon.
That's awesome.
Eva for
there we go. She's got
Mr. President. I'm
Eva's
for it.
on the campaign
I'd vote
trail.
for her. Saeed, thank you so much. Shukran. Victor, so thank you. Georgetta, Georgetta. We've got to find a time one day this week or Saturday.
Yeah.
Love
All right.
So much love.
Well, thank you again, Eva. We're gonna let you go. Like I said, don't go too far. We're gonna
pleasure
go over some stuff with you afterwards. You can hang out in the background of the studio if you want to. So, thank you again.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure, Eva. Definitely.
Really was great, Alonzo. I mean, really great, Eva.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's so much love. I love you all. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And we love you. Thank you so much for coming on again.
Thanks. Pleasure.
All right. Whew. All right. So, hopefully she stays back there in the background.
I sure hope so. I don't.
I hope so. We got things to talk. We got topics to go over after the show. But all right. Yeah, she says I'm here. Perfect. So there are some questions in here. I got to go back up above all the.
I can answer the which cloud do we focus on? Relatively easy. So there was a question: which cloud do we teach in our program? And the answer is we teach all clouds because there's nobody that's ever going to have a job and do well if they only know one cloud. But here's how we do it. Mm-hmm. So, Basan, and this is a very reasonable question. If I taught you how to drive, and you're in your car, and you had an elastic rotational vector directional changer, and then I taught you the specifics of that, and then I said, guess what? Today, I'm going to teach you about this gyroscopic angle changer that's got the word cloud in front of it. And then the next day, I said, hey, by the way, I've got something called the steering wheel. Now, if you tried to learn that and keep all that nonsense in your head, that would be insane. So what do we do as cloud architects? We take the stuff from the network and the data center to the cloud. And you know what the cloud is? It's nothing more than a network and a data center that's been virtualized. It's the same stuff. So what do? We teach you all the things that make the cloud possible, and then we teach you all cloud. So if I teach you what is a virtual machine and explain to that, now you will know that when you're in the data center taking a VMware or a KVM virtual machine and you're moving it to AWS to an EC2 instance, or an Azure virtual machine, or Oracle virtual machine, or a Google Compute Engine instance, it's the same silly thing, and you won't know and never learn. So we'll teach you how to work on all of them. And then some people would say, hey, I'm going to learn AWS S3. And I'd say, don't waste your time on that. Learn object storage. And here's why. If it's Dell EMC object storage, IBM object storage, Google Cloud object storage, AWS object storage, Azure object storage, or Oracle object storage, or it's on your Dynamics cloud, or your OpenStack cloud, guess what? It's the same thing. So we make sure that all of our students can design on all clouds. I'm also going to tell you this. As it stands right now, 13% of organizations are crazy enough to use a single cloud, and only 3% plan to use a single cloud in the future. So you can't know a cloud, you must know all the clouds, and that's why we teach them all.
Yep.
I got nothing to add.
Yeah, that's what Mike taught me, because one of the things I'll caveat is that I wish that I didn't learn AWS before I knew the cloud. Think about what I just said. I wish I did not know AWS before I knew the cloud. If I knew it, it would have cut my training in the absorption capability of the concept far easier, far quicker, far simpler if I just knew the cloud. Like he said, he multi-directional changer, steering wheel, tomato, no, fruit, vegetables, whatever. Just learn the cloud, period. And you're going to be in a really great space. So with anyone who's starting the community, or finally, you're in the community, you're jumping into the concept, you're jumping into the work, just focus on the cloud. Don't focus on, well, should I do Azure, then Google Cloud, then AWS, then Oracle? No, just work on the cloud, and everything else will be simplistic for you. It will be, it's an absorption, time frame, but you'll learn it far easier than if you just focus on a specific brand.
Yeah, and you'll know how to work anywhere. And if an employer ever says, "Hey, I want you to be a Google professional cloud architect," it'll take you about 2 days to study and pass the exam, because you already know all of it, because they're all the same. Only the names have changed. Wasn't there a Bon Jovi song? All the names have changed. Everything is just the same. Oh, I don't remember. Only the names have changed. Oh, anyway, it was from Bon Jovi, New Jersey.
I don't know. Bon Jovi's not that great.
Not my favorite now, but in the 80s, I thought it was cool.
I did that on purpose. So maybe
we're about to start a fight. Don't pick on this Bon Jovi, man.
Oh, my cat is so sad. Oh, she's sitting here right underneath me.
Is she a Bon Jovi fan?
My cat is a Wire fan, and since I've got a wire on me, and I've got like 16 Ethernet cables, and then I've got 6 studio lights that are hanging up and cables for everything, my cat's loving it.
Yeah, I think your cat might be a Spinal Tap fan.
Probably. I know she likes reggae because she listens to Bob Marley with me all the time.
All right. So here's our next question from Colin. How do I transition from help desk to cloud architect? I currently hold the practitioner and associate certificate, but don't have anything to add to my resume to get cloud hired. Okay, I got an idea.
Tell them your idea first, Chris, and then I'll.
I think you could say it better than I can.
Yeah.
Colin, the simplest, cheapest, and fastest way for you to become a cloud architect is to take our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. Because pretty much everybody that takes the program, assuming they do the work, they get hired in a reasonable period of time. So that is the simplest. Now, if you didn't want to do that with us, Colin, I'll still tell you what to do. The first thing that I would do is tell you must learn the network and the data center. So there's about 4 books. They're going to cost about $250. They're about 6,000 to 8,000 pages that'll give you an intro to part of the networking that you need to know. And they are Internet Routing Architectures from Bassam Halabi. They are Routing TCP Volumes 1 and 2 from Jeff Doyle, and they are Stevens TCP/IP. Now that's going to give you half of the networking you need. Now we teach all of this in our course, but if you wanted to do it on your own, you could do that. Now, in addition to that, you would also need to learn switching, which means spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking. You would also need to learn about WAN technologies, IPsec VPNs, SSL VPNs, software-defined networking, SASE networking, and private line technologies. Now, next you would need to learn block storage, object storage, file storage in depth, not what they cover in that certification, but in depth. Then you would need to learn about load balancers, and you can get that information from F5. And then you would need to learn about firewalls and VPN concentrators and IDS, IPS systems. Now you can get that from Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet, Checkpoint. Those companies make good documentation on that. And then after this, Colin, you will need to develop a certain set of skills. So we need to have executive skills as an architect. So the first thing we're going to do is ask an executive about their business. So we must have business acumen, and we train that. So you can get that in an MBA, art training, or something like that. But you really need it for this role, and that's why we train it. The next thing that you need to know is CXO relevancy, because you will be presenting and selling to CEOs and CIOs. So you have to get some training in that. I got some training, it's in our course. Then you will be in a position where you're going to be having to lead a team of 30 or 40 cloud engineers. So again, either get an MBA, get some leadership training. We train that as well. Now, in addition to those things, you're going to have to sell as an architect, because most of what we do is pre-sales. So you're going to have to learn how to sell based upon creating an ROI model, selling based on the value of the solution being greater than the cost. You will be giving presentations as a cloud architect in front of conferences, so you've got to get those skills up to snuff, and you'll most likely be interviewed by the press, so you will need to have those kind of executive writing skills for the job. The next thing that you need to do is as follows. When you work in help desk, people see you as a techie. And that's okay, but they see you as a techie. Now, in our world, we can't afford to be seen as a techie. We need to be seen as an equal parts technology professional and business executive. So you'll need to go through your resume and swap out all the techiness. So if you've got something where you're talking about the tech, talk about the transformation. Maybe you created a new trouble ticketing system that increased speed to solving customer problems by a certain percent. Maybe you train new help desk technicians to be more emotionally intelligent. That's something you could put in there. So talk about the transformation of what you've done, and then you'll get a cloud architect job because you're showing now you're a digital transformation specialist, you're an executive. So those are the things you would need to know. Now, we train you in our cloud architect career development program, and you get hired when you're done if you did our work, or you could do those things on your own. Now, also, you really need some kind of experience. So we create an internship for our students. And the things that you need experience are things with server virtualizations and containers and firewalls and VPN concentrators, etc. So I recommend, now, if you're in our program, you can use our servers, then it's free. But if you're not, you can buy a server, and it's going to cost about $1,500. But if you're not with us, you can do this. Get a server, set up VMware ESXi on it, build some Linux computers on it, build the firewall on it, build a VPN concentrator on it, set up a Microsoft Active Directory server. And when you're done that, Colin, build the cloud. All my students do. And you'll be prepared. Now, it's pretty easy to do in my program. It's $700 and you'll be done. Or you can do these things on your own and it'll be much more costly. But all I care is that you get cloud hired. Everything we do is for that. LM, how long is your training? Well, it depends upon your background. On average, if you've never worked in tech before, it takes me about 4 months to get you a cloud. I mean, if you've worked in tech before, it typically takes me about 4 months. But if you've never worked in tech before, it typically takes me about 8 months or so for you to get that cloud architect or solution architect job, because it's an extensive training program.
Yeah, so apparently I've upset the Bon Jovi fans.
And Abigail just asked the question, and if she looked very carefully, she would have seen my cat's tail. There's black, gray on her tail. It's real cute. It just went across the screen.
Yeah, Georgetta and Marla are coming after me.
Uh-oh.
Maybe Georgetta and Marley can let me remember the song. Only the names have changed yesterday. Something's fading away. I need to know this. It's going to drive me nuts. It's from the song New Jersey, the album New Jersey.
Yeah, so I got something to put up here. I know, so over the weekend, I think it was the weekend, or was it last week? We had Isaac and Robert and some of our friends out. Oh my God, Phoenix.
I haven't seen Isaac in a long time. Wow, Isaac and Robert. Isaac came to us as an IM architect. He's doing real well for himself as well. Great guy. I'm so happy to see everybody that's in Phoenix.
Yeah, so they went to Cracker Barrel and did not invite me. So
that's some of the best pancakes in the
world. Who's the other group?
I've got to pull the names up, and there's so many people.
I used to be able to recognize everyone, but every once in a while we've got a pretty big audience.
Yeah, maybe some people in the YouTube chat can help us out. So Lucas asked, "What were you saying about 4 and 8 months?" I'm sorry, I just joined.
So people were asking approximately how long it takes in our cloud architect career development program to become a cloud architect and get hired. And typically when I'm dealing with people that have got experience in technology, it's about typically 4 months to transform them into getting them hired. And for people that have no background, like me when I started, where I was a medical professional, or like Ronald, who was a pastor who just got hired, or Coyote that never worked in tech, well, actually, all of them got hired inside of 4 months. But I usually say it takes about 8 months to get somebody with no background hired as a cloud architect, assuming they do the job. Now, our training gets them hired, but the students have to do the job. I mean, they can't just buy the training and just get hired. They have to do the work.
Yeah. So this is, so we've got Haley and Dempson on the right-hand side there, and Robert and Isaac on the left-hand side out from the Phoenix area. So they are the latest group of people to get offline and go meet up with each other. And I know the New York or Washington people have been doing some training. I don't know. They're doing things that I don't know about, but interview training, some workshops on their own. They're doing it. They're doing it.
I love it. I want to get to LM's question real fast because this, honestly, we just have to address this.
Who is it?
LM had a question. He's assuming it's part-time when I say 4 months or 8 months.
Okay.
So LM, I need to be realistic with you. A cloud architect easily earns $150,000 to $400,000 a year. A good cloud architect earns $300,000 a year every year plus prior to bonuses. So LM, we're talking about a profession that gets paid more than a doctor and more than a lawyer. Now, doctors go to school and take on $250,000 of debt, and it's 7 years of school and a 4-year residency. And lawyers go to 4 years undergraduate and 3 years of law school, and they still earn half of what the average cloud architect is. So no, lots of people have tried to say, hey, just get this certification, which is 10 hours and you're going to be hired. No, not at all. You need to have the knowledge of the network and the data center. You need the business acumen of an MBA, the leadership skills of an MBA, the sales skills of an executive, and you need to be able to speak and convince the CEO that they need to spend $1 billion on your technology architecture. So no, that's not part-time studies. That's what it takes to build a career like this. And our students get it every day, but it's not a part-time thing.
But
I mean, you could do it by studying 20 hours a week.
Right. That's what they're asking. They clarified that they were asking about the program, the studying. Yeah. This is not a 40-hour a week training course.
No, but if somebody studies 20 hours a week, it's fine. But I want to set the expectation that, it's 500 hours of training in this program.
Right, but
500 hours. So even if somebody wanted to do it 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, they still couldn't do it in 2 or 3 months because it's 500 hours.
Yeah.
40 hours in a week. 10 weeks is 400 hours. So that's why it can take up to 8 months for people that don't have a tech background. And LM, to be fair, the people that do have a tech background generally don't need to complete all 500 hours to get hired. They generally get about 200 hours into it and they're already hired.
Right.
But,
and these are averages that we're talking about also.
And these are averages. And look, I've had several people get through in 3 weeks. Richard Afukar came to me and 3 weeks later was hired by AWS. Delroy Batt was with my program 3 weeks and they had 3 job offers. So there's not that. But when we're talking about a job that pays $200,000 a year, you really need a lot of knowledge. And a lot of people say, hey, can I just do a certification to get hired? And the answer is, of course not.
Nope.
And pretty much when they all do it, they come to me 6 months later after they tried that approach, or a year later. In some cases, people have been trying 2 and 3 years.
How many, why don't you share, Mike, how many, if you happen to just get the certification and you try to go on some interviews and it doesn't work, what should you do?
But if you go on more than 3 interviews and you're not hired, there's a problem. Now, the problem is one of the following. It's attitude, communication skills, technical competency, or attitude. But in most cases, it's the communication skills because they're looking for something and the person's not doing it. Now, really, the biggest problem I see on cloud architect interviews is people are studying cloud engineering and they apply for a cloud architect job and they don't have any cloud architect skills. They only have cloud admin skills or engineering skills.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue being a contrarian here about Bon Jovi. Apparently, everybody in the chat box are now Bon Jovi fans. I don't get it. I'm pretty sure it's only because I said that they're not that great.
Congratulations, Chris. You're the bad guy.
I mean, I got people putting album titles, song titles, lyric. Alonzo. What are you doing in the chat box?
I had to throw some more. I had to throw some gasoline on the
fire. As if it wasn't bad enough that everybody else. So I'm gonna say that the pancakes are okay. See, I'm gonna keep going here. The pancakes are okay. So
I think your taste buds are so defective. Are you nuts? Some of the best pancakes.
The chicken and dumplings are where it's at Cracker Barrel.
I've never had it, but the pancakes, man.
Okay, all right. Then I'll be completely honest. I've never had the pancakes, so I can't judge. Again, I'm just being a contrarian here. I told you that.
Oh my God, I haven't had pancakes.
Songs, so I can't even comment on Bon Jovi. So
those are fighting words, Chris. All right, everybody, jump on them about Bon Jovi right now.
All right, let me scroll back here and see if there's anything other.
There is a question. Well, there is another question. Yes, we provide interview training in our program, and yes, we provide salary negotiation training in our program as well. We have to teach people how to properly interview, and in class we do some practice stuff too. Yes, absolutely.
There was a question. Yeah. So that without live classes is what the question is.
Oh, without the live classes, there's no way to actually speak to the people. That's done in the live classes.
Yeah, that's and then Abigail's over here talking about the chairs at Cracker Barrel. How about the big checkers at Cracker Barrel? LM asks, is there rolling admission to the course, or do you have published start dates for a cohort?
Rolling admission. And the reason we do rolling admission, LM, is for 3 reasons. 1, all of our students get hired. And we can say this for the following reason. If our students do the work, we don't quit on them. As long as they don't quit on themselves, we don't quit on them. So a student signs up in my program, and all of a sudden they can only do 10 hours a week, and they need to be in my program for 11 months. Oh my God, we're thrilled to have them. 11 months later, they got hired. So we do that. And by doing a rolling admission, we can let people stay in our course until they are hired. And we love that. So the online part of our training that people do is on their own. So it's self-paced. Whatever.
Okay,
do it.
Sorry. I thought I got a lag here. I thought you had finished. I didn't mean
Okay. And the classes themselves, we teach architecture or leadership skills, and it doesn't matter which one you go to. Everybody gets them all in the end. So we use rolling admissions. That's how we keep the price low. And that's how we give the students the flexibility to stay in until they're hired, or a year.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question I really want to get to, but I missed this one. So I'm going to do this one first. All right. Hello. Can I get a cloud international remote job from a third world country to first world countries if I don't have any IT background, just starting my cloud career?
Well, first, I hate that term third world country because, other people would say I'm from a third world country. I think we're all the same people. Genetically speaking, we are 99.9% the same. All of us genetically all over the world, which means it's one world. So let's at least philosophically look at it from that perspective. Can somebody in the developing world who has access to internet access get a job in another part of the world? Absolutely. There is a shortage of qualified people, and we need people, and we need good people, and we need capable, hardworking people. So yes, you can. Now, you're going to have to be good, real good, meaning certifications aren't going to be enough. You're going to have to know something. But yes, you can do it. You can have a great career and it doesn't matter where you're at. I don't care where you're at. If you have internet access, people need you. I got asked recently to support a client in Japan from Palm Beach, Florida. So yes, anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter.
All right. And before we get to that, the next question, finally, somebody backing me up here. Sharon, it's kind of like, meh, Bon Jovi. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. So James has a very important question here. Should someone aspiring to become a cloud architect no?
Okay, so
I guess I should finish. Settle for a lesser position just to get their foot in the door.
Okay, so James, let's talk about the good and the bad of that. So I like action movies. My favorite actors were Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, the big guys that were creating action movies. Now, here's what happens, and I know one of them. Once you do enough action movies and you're an action star, and then you want to go and star in a romance comedy with Jennifer Aniston, the world looks at you and says, no. You're the big muscly guy. You're the war guy. You don't do that. So, James, what happens is if you get a lower position, you're not going to be able to move up in most cases because they're going to see you as that low person and you won't move up. Now, James, if you're poor and you can't afford to feed your family and you need to take a job to support your family, that's really, really great. But unless it's the best company in the world where you really want to work to, it's going to be much better to wait for the job you want and get the job you want. So I don't do entry-level jobs. I've never had one. None of my students get entry-level jobs either, and they don't need to. So why would you settle for a lower position where you earn a lot less, where you have a lower grade and title in the company, where it could take you 3 to 5 years to get to the goal where you really want to be, when you can spend 3 months and prepare better and get the more senior role in the first place and skip those 5 years? So I don't recommend entry-level roles, James, and we don't train for them. Now, well, I will tell my students sometimes to get a solution architect role instead of a cloud architect role, and we strongly encourage that, because in our world, anytime you can get an architect job as your first job, take it. And AWS is a really smart company. They hire the brightest, and they don't care if people have degrees. They don't care if people have certifications. They don't care if people have experience. They hire the brightest. So for those reasons, I'd train for the career I want and get the job in the career I want. If I wanted to be a soldier, I would train to be a soldier, not a yoga instructor. Now, I am a yoga instructor and I love yoga, but I train for the career I want and I get the job in the career I want, not somebody else's.
Any thoughts, Alonzo?
He said everything. I'm just trying to not recycle.
We're just comic relief at this point.
Yeah, we're trying to.
I'm resigned to that.
But I think that, yeah, why, why go to ninja school to be a drive a Zamboni for ice hockey? I mean, yeah, that's. I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, that's not what you're training for. So I know it's a very illustrative example, but it's like, don't cut yourself short just to feel like you have to crawl under the door just to get to where you are. Walk in there as the person you want to be.
I hope Eva recorded that. Don't go to ninja school to be Zamboni.
Have a Zamboni at an ice hockey rink. You don't do that. It's not what you train for.
And I know where people are getting the ideas from. See, 50, 60 years ago, when our grandparents went to work, they'd start the company in the beginning. And they would invest in the company, and the company would invest in them. And they'd stay at the same company for 40 or 50 years. They'd get a gold watch and they'd retire. And in those days, that was perfect. But today, a company will flip an employee like people used to trade baseball cards. So it's about architecting your career. And if you start at the bottom, you're going to be at the bottom.
Yep. Working your way up doesn't apply anymore. And I don't think you would want to do that anyway. When you have the skills to be where you want to be, you're already valuable. And if that company doesn't see your value, you have to show, you have to believe in yourself, and you go get the job you want. You're training for it. Go get it. Present yourself. Get the acumen. Get the soft skills. Get the presentation skills, and package that with your acumen on the network and the data center virtualized, and you're going to be a winner.
Yeah, and I think I got really lucky. And the reason I think I got really lucky was 25 years ago. I did it the wrong way. I went and took a Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer boot camp, paid $5,000, couldn't get hired. Became a CCNA, took an $11,000 CCNP boot camp, couldn't get hired. Took the CCDA, CCDP stuff. I had all these certifications. I applied for the jobs, and the employers were like, yes, so what? And I literally asked 50 recruiters, what's an employer want? And when they told me that perfect employee, I then said, okay, now that I know what my customer wants, I know the product that I need to be to get hired. Poof. Guess what? I was hired on my first interview. So, my wife buys shoes. She buys shoes she likes. So make sure you're likable. So you see someone like Eva, that kind of motivation, that kind of infectious energy and enthusiasm. Guess what? That's what we're looking for as hiring managers. We're looking for just that. Eva is the perfect case. That's why we brought her. I just wanted you to see the energy, the enthusiasm, and the passion that we employers will hire. I've hired 3 people like her that didn't even know anything about networking as network engineers, just because they were that great. So, You can't. It's hard to find an Eva, and when you do, you do it. As Spivak, the other leadership guy, says, hire for attitude. We can train skills. Totally believe with that. So part of our system is be the most likable, best leader, best communicator, best executive. It'll help you on your interview, I promise you.
So it's that time again that we got to come to an end, but Al came in with a question right on time, and I don't know how to answer this one, but I think it needs to be brought up to see if anybody can answer it.
Al, you can practice being more likable. So at least in our training, we talk a little bit about a rapport by design, where how you can create and mirror someone's body language in the beginning, which is what you would do with the hiring manager, and that's part of likability. But what is part of likability? Considering somebody else's feelings and seeing things from their perspective, being more empathetic. So, if I'd said to Alonzo's my good friend, and I can call Alonzo at 2:00 in the morning and say, I need you at my house tomorrow, and he'd do it because he's my good friend. But that's because he's a close friend. Now, if he worked for me and it's an emergency, I might say, Alonzo, I need you at my house tomorrow, and he'll come. And, a month later, I might get away with that. But on the third time, Alonzo's saying, no way, Mike, I'm out of here. I'm going to a different company because I didn't consider his feelings. And part of being more likable is considering things from another person's perspective. Would you ask someone to do something you wouldn't do? The answer should be no. Do you treat everyone with decency and respect? I got to tell you, if someone's nice to me and they're not nice to the person that's the receptionist, they're not going to be in my company. I don't want that in there. But, say things, so, avoid 3 trigger topics. Don't discuss money, politics, or religion, ever, unless you're talking about employment. Here's why. I promise you, you will aggravate 50% of the population no matter what you do. Keep things generic. And you know what? Don't draw any invisible boundaries between any of us. Mm-hmm. We're all the same. We're one family. Make sure that you show warmth in your heart. Speak with authenticity and really build some love for the people around you. And when you feel love for the people around you, I promise you they'll feel love for you too. And you'll be more likable because you're caring about them authentically. So at least that's what I would say. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we're going to come online and we're going to have a party with cloud architect, solution architect, career questions, cloud engineering questions, cloud architecture questions, any career you desire in the tech space. We'll be here and we'll be answering your questions live and free. And then after that, we're going to have the boot camp. And in the boot camp, we're going to do some AWS training. Again, it's going to be live and free. So we're going to have lots of fun stuff for you. And then on Thursday, we've got our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar, where we'll tell you everything you need to do, exactly how to get that first cloud architect job. So please sign up for all these free things. Chris, the links are in the description below, right?
Not for the YouTube Q&A tomorrow morning, but I'm putting it in the chat box. So that's okay. 9 o'clock Eastern tomorrow morning. We'll have a 2-hour Q&A session about any cloud career or cloud training questions that you might have. Make sure to come in and join us for that.
From 9 to 11 tomorrow. Anybody wants to come in, we'll answer your questions regarding any kind of technology career.
Yep. So any last words, gentlemen?
I had a great time. I just got to circle back around. Eva was great having her here, having all the great conversation. So I'm looking forward to next Tuesday. So I'm always excited to be here.
I don't know what's in store for next Tuesday, but we're going to have some fun.
I never know what's in store. People just tell me, Mike, you have to be here. And I say, cool. So it's always fun for me, but I have to echo, I was so happy to see Eva here. I'm always happy to see Eva, whether it's in class or here, but I was just thrilled to see Eva.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will see everyone next week. If you enjoyed this show, make sure to hit the like button. If you want to see more, make sure to hit the subscribe and the notifications button. And again, join us in the morning for our Cloud Career Q&A session, and join us at 12 p.m. Eastern tomorrow for our second day of the AWS boot camp. And if you feel like haranguing me about Bon Jovi and Cracker Barrel, you can do it in the comments, or you can come on any live stream and harangue me about Bon Jovi and Cracker Barrel.
Now we love comments on our YouTube videos. If you want to comment about Bon Jovi, I guess that's fine too.
Yeah. Let's do it. So, all right, everybody. Good night.
Have a great night, everybody.
Have a good one. Take care, everyone.
Take care.